In today's episode, we discuss one of the loopiest roller coasters in the world and its short but extremely troubled history. Welcome to Airtime Traveler. How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the Roller Coaster History Podcast. You are listening to Airtime Traveler. My name is Nathan Grace, and as always, I'm joined by my wife and lovely co-host.
Hello, I'm Haley Grace.
And thank you for tuning into this episode. I'm just gonna start this off by saying, bear with us today. I don't know what is going on with us today. This is like, what is this, the fourth time we've restarted?
Fourth time.
It's been a day, so I feel like we say that every time we record. We're like, oh, the kids were just so much today, but it really is. It really is.
Literally every time. I feel like they bottle it up and like let it loose on Sundays and the day that we record.
They're like, oh, what day are they recording?
Oh, Wednesday.
Okay,
yeah, let's give them HE double hockey sticks, man.
Let's wreak havoc that day.
Yeah.
So bear with us, but I feel like after the first three, I feel like we got out our system. I think we're feeling a little better for this.
I really hope so.
Because we're not stopping this time. This is it's like we're live now. This what gets recorded on the podcast stays on the podcast now.
It's the opposite of what stays here happens here.
Yeah. So.
Yep.
Oh, well, if this is your first time tuning in to Airtime Traveler, welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Here at the Roller Coaster History Podcast, we, rather than talk about the history of the roller coaster in general, we take one roller coaster and we do a deep dive into the history of that coaster. So I'm a coaster enthusiast and have been for a long time. And my wife Haley is a member of the GP, or the general public. So I'm here to do the research and tell the stories, and she's here to listen and to make me more interesting. So that's kind of how it works here. And I mean, 44 episodes in, I think we've got it down to a pretty good science. So yeah. Some people enjoy the show. You know, it's not just our moms listening, so that's good. So
let's be real. Your mom, not my mom.
That's true. Your mom's probably never listened to the show.
No. No, I think she still forgets sometimes that we have it.
It's probably true.
She's like, oh, yeah, that's a thing.
We definitely have family members that are, like, tuning in every time. And then there's other family members that are like, oh, yeah, you do a podcast, don't you? Like, so.
Yeah.
That's all right. Some people just aren't podcast people, too. So I think some other family members would be more into it if we did, like, the YouTube thing. Or like TikTok, but I don't know. That's just not really something we've gotten into yet. So
not yet.
Someday.
We want to.
Right. Maybe when the kids are older, because right now it is so hard just doing the podcast, let alone adding more things on top of it. So
yeah, that's true.
So, but we enjoy it.
We do.
So,
yeah.
Well, we talked a little bit about news in some of our other previous recordings that you're not going to hear, but I think really the only thing we were kind of talking about is just the whole Disney changing their fast passes this week, and then Universal had their big announcement with Dark Universe, and just kind of this contrast between Disney World kind of making announcements that people are kind of meh about, and it's just like, this is overcomplicating things, while Universal's, continually making announcements about their new park opening next year, and people are just eating it up. So
yeah,
I don't know. It's interesting. We're obviously, if you've listened to the show for a long time, we're big Disney fans. I've been going to Disney ever since I think I was 10 when we went for the first time. My parents are DVC members. Like, we go to Disney all the time. And so, but I like to, because I'm a coaster enthusiast, there's kind of, this is kind of a thing that I don't know that I've talked to you about. There's kind of this divide almost, at least on Twitter. I don't know if it's this way all over the place, but at least on Twitter, there's kind of this divide between coaster enthusiasts and Disney enthusiasts.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of overlap there. Like, pretty much anybody that's a coaster enthusiast is like, well, I'm not going to Disney. The Cedar Fair's got way better coasters, and Velocicoaster at Universal is better than anything Disney has. And then the Disney people are like, oh, their coasters don't even have any theming. Like, you know, like, so there's just like this kind of divide between, you know, the Disney. And I feel like I kind of fall in this middle ground that there's not a lot of people here. Like, where I love Disney because I grew up with that, but I also love roller coasters at the other parks. And so I just kind of, I don't know, I see the best of both worlds, I like to think. And so I try not to be biased towards one side or the other.
You're not roller coasterist?
No, I'm not. I don't disparage one coaster over another. So that's not true. I've definitely called one.
Don't call the kettle black there, my love.
I've been given a hard time to Wild Mouse at Lagoon the past few weeks. But no, I like to think that I am not biased one way or the other, and so it's just kind of interesting to see this park, Disney, that I grew up loving, just kind of, I don't know, people aren't super excited about what's going on over there right now, and it's kind of sad. So I hope they've got something really, really awesome in their back pocket for, you know, after Epic Universe is opening, that, you know, Disney's got an answer for that. So we'll have to wait and see. So
they keep teasing everything, but it's just like not anything solid.
I heard rumors that Bob Iger and some of the other Disney executives were at Magic Kingdom this week looking at the land back behind Big Thunder Mountain, where their new land is supposedly coming at Magic Kingdom in the future. So
one can only hope.
Hopefully there is, you know, some progress being made there, and we'll see something exciting in the, you know, maybe D23. Maybe we'll get a big announcement. We'll have to see. So.
Oh, I hope so. When is D23 coming
September, up? August, something like that. I think it's in the. You know, it's in the fall. I'm pretty sure. So.
That's shame on me for not knowing.
Well, it's not like we've ever gone.
I want to. Your mom almost went, didn't she?
No, she did go.
She did go.
Yeah, she did go. So.
D23 is August 9th, 10th, and 11th.
There you go. So maybe early August. You know, that's like, what, 6 weeks from now. Maybe we get some
43
updates.
43 days, 13 hours, 23 minutes, and 38 seconds. They have a countdown on their website. So.
Perfect. So maybe we'll get some WDW announcements around that time frame. So hopefully. One can hope.
Because, like, Tokyo's killing it.
Oh, yeah. Disney Sea.
It's killing
They're doing some crazy awesome stuff over there right now. So
I guess that is
granted
news.
And granted some of that funding comes from
Tokyo.
It's from the
something like that.
I don't know the exact details. Basically, it's not 100% funded by Disney, which I think helps with the amount of money that's being put into those projects over there. So anyway.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, why don't we jump into the topic for today's episode? So today we're going back to Kennywood, which, for those of you who don't know, is Haley's home park.
It's my home park.
Yeah, Haley grew up in the Pittsburgh area, and so she grew up going to Kennywood. And so Kennywood's in a special place in our hearts. We've been there several times. I think our last Kennywood episode, what did we do? Oh, we did Jackrabbit. We did Jackrabbit last season, was our last Kennywood episode.
Good old Jackrabbit.
So we're going from the park's oldest coaster to the park's newest coaster, because we're talking Steel Curtain at Kennywood today.
Okay.
So this one's interesting because Haley actually has not been on Steel Curtain.
No.
Partially because it freaks her out a little bit. Because she's been prone to vertigo in the past, and so
a lot of it.
9 inversions makes her a little nervous.
Makes me very nervous.
But also just because every time you and I have gone, it hasn't been open.
True. The one time it was open that was when you went with my brother.
Exactly. So I've only ridden it one time. Because I don't remember if the line was just crazy later in the day or if it closed down, which is common. But the one ride I did get was very good, so I will say I did enjoy it a lot. But so Haley hasn't been on this one, but it's not entirely because
I don't know if I'll ever get on it. I'm serious. I really don't think I will.
The one thing I've always said that I think is beneficial for Steel Curtain over some of the other looping coasters you've been on is just lap bars. So you don't have to worry about headbanging at all, which I know has been a problem on like some B&M loopers. So
I don't know.
Maybe someday, we'll see. So Steel Curtain opened in 2019 at a cost of $20 million, which is pretty significant. So
that's a lot of money.
Now, I will say it opened with a whole new section of the park, and I've heard some rumors that the coaster was only $9 million and everything else was $11 million. So I don't know exactly what the breakout is there, but it's not really. There's not really a whole lot there. There's
nothing new there. It's like a game and a coaster. That's it.
Well, so there's a big gift shop, like with a lot of Steelers stuff in there, and then there is a restaurant. So, but I mean, I don't know.
That's not.
I'm not a Steelers fan, so I'm not.
Oh,
I'm kind of like ride the coaster and I'm out of here. Like, I'm not buying anything in the gift shop. That's for sure.
Don't let them hear you say that.
Oh, wait till you get to the customer reviews. Just we got some good ones in there.
Lovely.
4,000 feet long, 220 feet tall, which makes it I think still as of right now, the tallest coaster in Pennsylvania.
Really?
Yeah, just slightly taller than Skyrush, Candemonium, and Phantom's Revenge. So,
even though Phantom's Revenge has the bigger drop because they use the land.
Actually, no. I actually think it's a lot taller than Phantom's Revenge, but the drops are pretty close. Because I think Phantom's drop is like 205 feet, something like that. So, which is kind of in the same ballpark as Skyrush and Candemonium, from what I recollect. So,
yeah.
9 inversions, as we were talking about earlier. So, for those of you, if you're not a coaster enthusiast, that means it goes upside down 9 times. That's what inversions means. Top speed of 75 miles per hour and average 2023 wait time of 34 minutes, which that checks out. So I think your brother and I waited 45 minutes the day that we were there, and we went there. That was the first ride we went to. We went straight to Steel Curtain, and it was only operating one train, so we still waited 45 minutes. So that's
yeah.
We'll get into that later in the episode.
Yeah.
In the Coaster Bot rankings, it ranks at number 88 in the country, which is fairly low. I mean, I enjoyed it a lot more than the average enthusiast, but I don't also... Some of that could be impacted by you've gone to Kennywood and you've never been able to ride it. Like, just because of, it's been open for 5 years, but there's just been lots of issues with it that we'll get into. So I don't know if that's impacting the rankings here at all.
I think it is.
It ranks below coasters such as Incredible Hulk at Universal Studios, Kumba at Busch Gardens Tampa, and Monster at Adventureland. It ranks above coasters such as Fahrenheit at Hershey Park, Superman Krypton Coaster at Six Flags Fiesta Texas, and Dominator at King's Dominion. At Kennywood, it ranks second because, obviously, Phantom's Revenge is going to be number 1. So
superior.
I will say they're a little closer in my rankings than most people, but Phantom's Revenge is still better. I gotta say. The rest of the rankings kind of interesting, though. Thunderbolt at number 3, Jackrabbit at number 4, then Skyrocket at 5, Racer at 6, and Exterminator at 7. The rest of these rankings are completely different from what I have. My number 3 is actually Jackrabbit, and then Thunderbolt, and then Skyrocket, I think is how I have it. So I guess it's just Jackrabbit and Thunderbolt that I have switched around in my rankings versus what's here. So I think you were saying Skyrocket's your number 3.
I think mine's Phantom.
Number 2, I guess, because you haven't been on Steel Curtain.
Well, yeah, I think mine would be Phantom, probably Racer.
Oh, okay.
Then Skyrocket, then Thunderbolt, then the Exterminator, and then
Jackrabbit.
No.
Jackrabbit above or below Exterminator? It's an important decision here.
I don't know.
I've never actually been on Jackrabbit with you, because every time we go, you're kind of like.
Well, no, we were in line, and I had to hop out of line.
That's right, because Harmony was getting fussy. Yeah, right. That's right. And the first time we went, you had a headache.
Yeah.
And so I rode it by myself. So yeah.
Yep.
I've rode it with your brother, but I haven't rode it with you.
Yep. So, sounds accurate.
Yep. Review the name. We'll talk about the name in a minute. I think it's a decent name. Like, steel is used a lot in coaster names, so I think having steel on the name is fine. It's
very historically accurate.
It is, and we'll get into the name. It very much fits the Pittsburgh area, and yeah.
I could give you a whole history lesson on the steel curtain. The actual steel curtain. Yeah. So.
The logo, it's a decent logo. I mean, they're using the Steelers font here, and then also with the actual, I don't know the terminology of like a steel forge, just pouring the molten steel. Yeah. So it's a combination of the Steelers, but also the steel industry from Pittsburgh. Just kind of a good logo that ties in multiple things there. The one thing I will call out about the logo, which there are other parks that do this, the name of the coaster is Steel Curtain. Like, when you look at all the promotional stuff and all that, it's Steel Curtain, but the logo has the Steel Curtain. And that's not like a big deal, but it is confusing because, like, that does make a difference in what to actually call the coaster, if the name, like, if the is in the name or not, and I don't know, it's just the logo is deceiving in that sense. Reviewed the paint scheme. I mean, it's not much a whole lot to say here. It's the typical yellow and black that the Steelers have going on. So
black from that picture. It looks navy.
It does look very blue in this picture, and it almost looks like blue and orange in this picture.
Even looking at the picture makes me want to throw up.
It was a wild ride.
So intimidating.
It's especially like because you walk like right underneath this inversion at the top here. You walk right underneath it as you head towards the entrance, and the coaster just kind of surrounds this plaza that you walk through as you head to the entrance of the ride, and so you can easily see everything that's happening on the coaster. So. The trains, I like the trains. They're designed after the helmets of the actual Steelers players. Well, actually, to be fair, I think this is like the shoulder pads, but then like the front here with just the yellow stripe and the number, that's like their helmets is what that's designed after.
Yeah.
And then the seats are designed to look like footballs, so they're fun trains.
They are fun.
Yeah, they did a good job, just having fun with the design of the trains to match in well with the theme. So
yeah.
Here's the park's description of the ride.
Here we go.
Kennywood and the Pittsburgh Steelers are proud to introduce the Steel Curtain. At a maximum height of 220 feet, the colossal steel structure of the coaster serves as a landmark addition to the park. During this 2-minute adrenaline rush, riders speed through 4,000 feet of track at 76 miles per hour. If that's not enough to get your heart racing, navigating the 9 inversions certainly will. You will need nerves of steel to face this ride, but once you try it, you will be back again and again. Steel Curtain is guaranteed to make a lasting impression.
Wow.
Yeah, there's a lot there. So there was actually like 2 more paragraphs underneath this one too, talking more about the records it broke and different things like that. So there was
very
descriptive of the ride. So. So it's a decent description, though. It's not like overly dramatic, like some are like you. I don't know. Some that we've read, it's so dramatic. It's like you will feel your blood pumping, and you'll. I don't know. I can't think of it right now. But just some of them, it just sounds like you're gonna die if you ride this coaster, or like come close to it. And this one's just like it'll keep you coming back again and again. I'm like, that's a decent description. So.
Yeah.
Customer reviews. Now, this is a little difficult because there's actually no reviews for Steel Curtain on Google, which is weird. I don't know. Sometimes that happens with our coasters. Like, just no one has left a review before to start it up. I don't know. I don't know exactly how Google reviews works because. If I'm being honest, I don't leave reviews. I like reading them because I think it's hilarious and they're informative, but I don't actually leave reviews, so I don't know exactly how this all works for Google reviews, but so I had to pull some. I pulled some reviews there were some reviews for Steelers Country, which is the section of the park that it's in. I don't know why there's reviews for that and not Steel Curtain, but there were 8 reviews for that, and then I pulled some others from a coaster enthusiast site where you can go and leave ratings. So there's some funny ones here.
Oh, funny. Okay.
Oh, they're always funny.
They're dissing my Steelers. See how
5 stars. Here's 5 stars. Good stuff. Great ride. Nice theming. There you go. Short and sweet. Okay. Points for brevity. Here's another 5-star. This 5-star review is for the gift shop you walk through after leaving the Steel Curtain coaster. An amazing selection of Steelers merch. Something for everyone. I don't think for everyone. I don't think the Bengals fans going through there are gonna find something they want.
Gosh.
Here's another 5-star. Currently my number 2 overall. This ride is a punch. I feel like I like this ride too much. Only complaints are long lines, and the vibration, the inversions are so great and actually very intense as well. Yes, I do see it going down in rankings eventually when I get on more coasters, but this will probably always be my favorite at Kennywood. So, some people will put this above Phantom's Revenge in their rankings, just depending on. It really depends on if your cup of tea is inversions or airtime. That's really what it comes down to. So,
not inversions.
Here's a 4-star rating. Awesome looping hypercoaster. Really good mix of forces, and the restraints allow you to freely feel all of them. That's pretty much how I feel about it too. 5 stars. Love smooth inversion machines. Also, people tend not to like this ride, but I found it to be really fun for me. They also only have one train that's operational at a time, so that's a major downside as it's really popular. Also, hate the theming being a Bengals fan. I like to think this guy wanted to give it a 4-star rating just because it's Steelers themed.
Oh my gosh.
Another 5-star. Steel Curtain is a bizarrely perfect cocktail of elements, all crafted together to form a monstrously ugly towering structure across the skyline of Pittsburgh.
Oh my gosh.
I will say he is not alone in some people think that the coaster looks ugly. Yeah. There's some people that are like, you ruined our Kennywood skyline with this coaster. So it's kind of funny. The feeling of height that is conveyed when hung upside down through its first towering inversion is astounding. Then goes on to talk more about it. Here's 3 stars. Just like the Steelers in real life, it's bad and Kenny Pickett cursed it.
Ravens!
Go Ravens, yeah.
Oh my word.
Well, and if you're a football fan, you understand if you're a football and a coaster enthusiast fan like myself, you know what this is talking about because Kenny Pickett was their quarterback last year and he went and rode Steel Curtain for like some promotional thing. Mm-hmm. Well, then Kenny Pickett and the Steelers, Kenny Pickett ended up being a terrible quarterback for the Steelers all year. And then Steel Curtain's having issues right now. And so this guy's like, Kenny Pickett cursed the Steelers and Steel Curtain.
Oh my gosh. Whatever.
So that's kind of funny. 2 stars, despite the name, isn't... this is a review of Steelers Country again.
Okay.
2 stars, despite the name, isn't technically a country. More so a themed location in an amusement park.
Whoa!
Oh, sorry. I had no idea that's what we were talking about here. I'm glad you clarified that for me.
Okay, that's like my favorite review I've ever read.
I read that. I'm like,
trying to be like sarcastic.
They have to be, right? There's no way they really thought
it's supposed to be. Okay.
I have no idea.
Okay, they need to go to Epcot if they.
Yeah, they thought this was like Kennywood starting their own Epcot thing. Like, oh, Steelers Country? I've never heard of that before. Oh, it's just like, I don't know. I'm very confused. And then finally, 1 star. I'm a Jets fan and the Steelers suck.
Oh, wow.
There you go. That's the review of the coaster. I hate this coaster. It's a Steelers coaster. Oh, so there are our customer reviews of Steel Curtain at Kennywood. Let's talk about the history. So let's hop into our time machine, keep your hands, arms, feet, and legs inside the vehicle, secure all loose articles, don't want to lose your phone in the 1730s or something like that. And
we're not even going back that far?
Well, I don't know. Flowing through the space-time continuum. I don't know which direction we're going, and So I don't know anything about time machines. I just pretend, right? So
I don't think anybody knows anything about time machines.
So let's go back to 1975. All right, 1975. We've got kind of two things that are going on in the Pittsburgh area kind of simultaneously here that kind of lead up to Steel Curtain a long time from now. So in 1975, Kennywood opens Logjammer, which is a classic log flume ride that was designed by Aerodynamics. I was going to ask you, do you remember this ride at all? Do you? Do you have like memories of riding it, or is it just kind of like, I remember that it was there?
I remember that it was there.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. We didn't go to, I mean, you have to remember, like, my parents never really took us to Kennywood that often. They took us to Idlewild. They liked Idlewild better. So.
Like, even when you were like, because, let's see, Steel Curtain opened after we got married, so Logjammer would have still been there when you were like in high school. So I just didn't know if you went to Kennywood a lot when you were in high school or like
sometimes.
Yeah.
So I mean, it was still decently expensive. So like we didn't like.
True.
Yeah.
Especially so, like, for teenagers.
I mean, yeah, like we went like for band trips, and I went on dates occasionally to there, so...
Gotcha. And you didn't go and ride Logjammer. That wasn't like, we have to ride Logjammer.
Not necessarily.
Because I'll tell you, we'll get into it, but there's some people that very, very religiously love this ride. So it was situated in a wooded area of the park, and spanned over 1,650 feet. One of its most defining features was the spillway drop, which actually, it's basically a mid-course drop on the ride, but it also went back up, which doesn't happen a lot on log flumes just because of the nature of gravity. Yeah. The water would, kind of pull down at the bottom. So it's a little more technically complicated to be able to get a log flume to go down and then back up. Now, there are some log flumes that do this, such as Timber Mountain Log Ride at Knott's Berry Farm, and actually Splash Mountain at Disneyland, that have a down and then a back up. But on those rides, typically what they do is the log actually will leave the flume and go on like almost kind of like roller coaster track, go through this little section, and then go back into the water flume at the end of it. Mm-hmm. So there is an argument that could be made that Splash Mountain at Disneyland is therefore a water coaster, but that is
that's far-fetched.
That is extremely far-fetched, and we're not going to get that crazy here. Let's I'm not
reel it back in, Nathan.
It reminds me when we were at Disney a few months ago, we were on Journey into Imagination. And I was sitting with Levi and Parker, and so I was just kind of letting them do their thing, and my parents were sitting in front of us. Mm-hmm. I think you had to stay off to feed Harmony.
Yeah.
And so as we're going on Journey into Imagination, I looked at the track, and it's basically roller coaster track, but it's instead of gravity powered, it's actually like a motor that's pushing you along, right?
Yeah, it's like a flat ride, but like with
but it's on a track that looks like roller coaster track. And I remember looking at that, I was like,
it's an older ride.
I was like, if they just let you take a little bit of gravity during this, because like there's one portion that actually goes down and then makes like a right turn. I was like, if they just let that part be gravity powered, you could totally classify this as a roller coaster.
There you go. You got your coaster credit there.
Journey into Imagination, the Figment coaster. So, yeah. But that's not what's going on here with Logjammer. The whole thing is continuous log flume, and Aerodynamics developed technology that allowed them to do that, and it's impressive especially for 1975. So, let's see. The spillway drop featured water through the holes. Oh, I already went through that. Logjammer's theme centered around a logging camp motive and had like rustic theming and wooden structures. Typical, log flume ride, right? And over the years, it'd been at the park for a long time, and it just kind of became a staple of Kennywood's lineup of attractions, right?
Right.
So, now around the same time, we're going to completely shift gears. We're still in Pittsburgh, but now let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yay!
Okay, so we're leaving Kennywood, leaving West Mifflin and moving over to the actual city of Pittsburgh. During the 1970s, the Pittsburgh Steelers were easily the most dominant team in the NFL at the time. And part of the reason was their defensive line was one of the best defensive lines of all time in the NFL. The core members of this defensive line were Joe Green, L.C. Greenwood, Dwight White, and Ernie Holmes. So here's a picture of the defensive line there. And now they had been so dominant that there was, from what I understand, there was a contest in like a newspaper in Pittsburgh at the time to give a name to the defense, like a nickname to the defensive line. Mm-hmm. And there was a bunch of people that submitted this name, but they just picked one person that submitted that name and they win the contest or whatever. But the nickname that was eventually developed was the Steel Curtain. So, which is in reference to the what's it called, the Iron Curtain. That's in reference to the Berlin Wall, if I'm recollecting that right from history lessons. This is a roller coaster history podcast, but I don't claim to be good about world history. Let's be clear with that. True. But it's in reference to that. It's just replacing iron with steel, and so the Steel Curtain essentially saying it's like an impenetrable wall. The offense just can't even get through the defensive line, and so. Just a little bit about these four players that made up the Steel Curtain. Joe Green, known as Mean Joe Green, was the anchor of the Steel Curtain and was a Hall of Famer, or is a Hall of Famer now. Mm-hmm. Earned him 2 NFL Defensive Player of the Year awards during the 1970s. L.C. Greenwood was a defensive end, and he was a 6-time Pro Bowl selection and led the league in sacks twice during his career. And then Dwight White was nicknamed Mad Dog for his playing style and tenacity. And Ernie Holmes was another defensive tackle and provided strength and disruption in the interior of the defensive line. So the 4 of those, plus a couple of other players that kind of made up the bench behind the defensive line, it became legendary for how unstoppable they were. Yeah. And eventually led the Steelers to 4 Super Bowls in the 1970s. Super Bowls 9, 10, 13, and 14. So they were just completely dominant. I know I've used that word a lot describing this, but there's no better way to say it. It's just absolutely dominant in the 1970s. And so the Steel Curtain has kind of become the standard for defensive lines even nowadays. Like, they popularized 3-4 defense, which I mean means nothing to you, but if people are listening to know football, like 3-4 defense was not really a thing until the Steel Curtain popularized that in the 1970s. Yeah. So their legacy continues to influence NFL defensive strategies to this day, and even to this day, like, it's just those players are basically Pittsburgh royalty from what I understand. So it's everyone's very, very proud of their Steelers, especially the Steelers from the 70s and how dominant they were. It's true. So
I mean, my parents still talk about them, so yeah,
so it was a big deal. Big part of Pittsburgh culture, definitely. So now back to Kennywood. Okay, so both of those things are going on in the 70s. Kennywood opens this log flume. The Steelers are dominating the NFL behind the Steel Curtain on the defensive side of the ball. Logjammer continues to operate at Kennywood for decades and became one of the park's most popular attractions, especially in the summer, obviously. Over the years, there were lots of other log flumes that featured that spillway drop, kind of the up and down drop, right? But one by one, they would close throughout the country, and eventually, Logjammer was the only one of its kind left in the country. The park would open some additional water rides, such as 1985, they would open Raging Rapids, the rapid ride that I think just barely reopened in the past year or two. It's never been open when I've gone to the park. Ride? Yeah, the rapid ride. It's never been open while I'm there.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it's been closed so much. It is fun. I do have memories of going on the rapid ride.
Yeah, no.
So
that opens in 1985, and then the Shoot the Chutes ride called Pittsburgh Plunge opens in 1995, which I have been on that one. I think when the first time you and I went, we rode that one that day. But this is a fun fact I learned about this. I don't know if you know this. So the official name of Pittsburgh Plunge is spelt like this.
Yeah.
So you did know that?
Yeah.
So what's the story behind that? Why is it?
I don't know.
You don't know the story?
I have no idea.
Here you go. Here's the story.
Okay.
From 1890 to 1911, there was a brief period where the city of Pittsburgh decided to drop the H from the name. What? That's a true story.
I had no idea.
They decided to drop the H from the name, and then finally in 1911, they were like, why did we do this?
Why did we do that?
This is so confusing.
Well, because there's Pittsburgh, Kansas, which is with just the G, and then there's Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, with just the H.
It is funny around here because we are fairly close to Pittsburgh, Kansas. Like, when we tell people where Haley's from, we have to clarify. Like, most places in the country, if you say Pittsburgh, they'll be like, oh, in Pennsylvania. But here, we've had some people say, like, Pittsburgh, Kansas. And we're like, no, why? The Pittsburgh, not the fake Pittsburgh.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah.
So the park officials just thought that would be a fun little Easter egg to name it after the Pittsburgh of the 1890s without the H. And even if you go to the website, there's a little asterisk that's part of the name. And then if you go to the bottom, there's a little explanation down at the bottom of why it doesn't have the H, which is really funny. So despite
I love that they kept that, though. Like,
yeah.
It's a part of our history.
Yeah, it's funny. So it's yeah, there's a lot of Pittsburgh history that gets fed back into Kennywood. They're very proud of, being a part of the city of Pittsburgh, and they thrive off of that, which I think is why people find it so endearing. And it's, just such a fun part of growing up in Pittsburgh, and Kennywood is just, a part of that childhood.
I mean, Kennywood's been around for
forever.
Yeah.
For over 100 years.
I mean, Jackrabbit's 100+ years old, so
yeah, and the park's obviously been open even longer than that.
Right.
So yeah. So despite these new water attractions, though, Logjammer continued to be, it was arguably still more popular than these newer attractions. So there's some nostalgia that's inherent in part of that too. But also, Pittsburgh Plunge is really just an up, a turn, and then a drop, and then it turns back into the station. Like, it's really just about a big splash. There's no theming or anything like that. Raging Rapids is a little bit more than that from what I understand. But Logjammer has, like, a lot of theming. It's got multiple drops. So
now, if I remember correctly, Logjammer is a single log, kind of.
Yeah, it's like a Splash Mountain, American Plunge type of. Yeah, this is Pittsburgh Plunge here. It's like 4 across seating. Yeah. So.
Yeah. I've been on the Pittsburgh Plunge more than I've been on the Logjammer. So.
Gotcha. So, that brings us all the way to 2017. So, talked a little bit about, 70s, and then we're kind of, fast forwarding through all the way up to 2017. So, it's been 7 years at this point since the park's last roller coaster, Skyrocket, opened in 2010. Now, one of Kennywood's biggest problems they face when it comes to development is that they're really running out of space. Like, they're kind of landlocked. The terrain's difficult to work with, especially on the back side of the park, where Phantom's Revenge is. And so it's difficult whenever they want to add a large-scale attraction. That generally means either another attraction has to go, or we've talked about this before, they could potentially put in a parking garage, and then that would open up some more space on the other side of the road. I don't know. That seems like a complicated process, but anyway, there's things they could do, but really it's just a lot easier to remove an old attraction and put in a new one, which they haven't done a lot, but there has been a couple times. So that leads us to the announcement on September 13th, 2017, when Kennywood announced that after a 42-year run at the park, Logjammer would be closing in 4 days. Now, this isn't the first time we've had this issue with Kennywood.
Yep.
This happened with, was it Steel Phantom? I think it was Steel Phantom, right? Where people were just like, they were just like, oh, sorry, it's not opening again.
Yeah.
And like they never got a chance to write it.
They did this with, I think, Kenny Kangaroo too.
Oh yeah, that's right. They tried to close Kenny Kangaroo and people threw hands.
Yeah, that was the worst one. They were like, "Do not take our Kangaroo away."
That I forgot about that. So yeah, Kennywood's had issues with making last minute decisions, and this isn't the last minute decision we will talk about today. But yeah, I mean, giving people only 4 days to get there to write it one more time, that is just poor planning.
Buy your plane ticket.
That is just poor planning in my opinion. Yep. So, I mean, it's enough time to get season pass holders there, but I mean, I don't know. What if it was like you, where we're down here? What if we got an announcement today that Phantom's Revenge would be closing in 4 days?
I don't care.
No,
we would have made it. Screw it. I don't care how much it costs.
But that's the thing, right? It's like, it's very inconvenient for people that's a big part, if that's a big part of their childhood,
right,
to try to travel cross country to try to ride this ride in the next 4 days. So anyway, poor planning in my opinion. But there was a lot of controversy over this too. Not even just the fact that it was closing in 4 days, but people were like really angry that the park was even considering closing this ride. Like, there were petitions. Like, so here's one here: Save the Logjammer at Kennywood. Has 8,300 people sign this petition. That's pretty significant. I mean, the park has, upwards of 1 million people that go every year, but like 8,300, that's a significant amount for a petition. And so, yeah, there's a lot of people. And I found this page on Facebook that's literally called Logjammer Memories. Like, it's just a whole group of people that just post like their memories of riding Logjammer. It started out as a page to like do this, essentially, to be a petition page, but now that the ride's gone, it just serves as like people posting pictures of like them on Logjammer and stuff. I'm like, wow, that's really sad.
That's really sad.
So like this ride held a special place in a lot of people's hearts. So I was curious if you had like been on it lots and you're like, oh man, I miss Logjammer, but because some people, this was like top maybe even favorite ride in the park, like based on some of these that I've read. So yeah, very interesting. And I get that it's a difficult situation when you aren't ready to announce what's replacing the attraction, but construction for said attraction needs to begin, because that's kind of what happened with Silver Dollar City last year, that they announced that the old Fire in the Hole was closing. They announced it in February, and we didn't know what the quote-unquote replacement was, because it's kind of a replacement, but not really, because it's in a different spot, but I don't know. It's a replacement. In spirit, it is. And we didn't know what that replacement was until, when was the announcement? Like August, September, somewhere in there?
Yeah.
So, that's kind of how Silver Dollar City did it too, but I don't know. It's a tough thing. I get when parks have to deal with that. The difference here is only giving them 4 days to go and write it, where Silver Dollar City gave us a whole year to go ride Fire in the Hole one more time. So that's a big difference.
I feel like if they were to like close down like Jackrabbit, they do something like that.
I sure would hope so. So
I know
I don't have a lot of faith in them at this point.
True.
So I actually, since we're talking about the Kangaroo, I actually think the Kangaroo used to be where Logjammer is. And then when they built Logjammer, they moved Kangaroo, not to where it is now, but they moved it to some other spot. And then after the whole fallout of them trying to close it and then saying, just kidding, and then they refurbished it and put it where it is now. So, I mean, the Kangaroo's been all over that park. It's hopped around from location to location, so.
Yeah, true. They're like, here. It's hopping.
That's... That joke just went right over his head.
And then come back and I tried to make the same joke. Like we said, it's been a day.
That was great. That was funny. Just to see the reaction on her face of like,
whatever.
So, in January 2018, log jammer was demolished, and here's some sad pictures from the demolition. Poor log jammer. So
yeah, poor log jammer.
Now, Kennywood enthusiasts would have to wait until June of that year when teasers for the new attraction finally started to be released. Now, this was something I learned recently. So I knew a lot of this story previous to putting this episode together, but something I learned recently is I guess before Kennywood decided to move forward with what we'll talk about eventually becomes Steel Curtain, they actually had discussions with RMC about building a ground-up wooden coaster on that plot of land, like an Outlaw Run.
Oh, that would have been so
Which
cool.
just sounds fantastic.
I would have been so all over that, man.
I'm not going to say it's never going to happen, because I do think that that is a park that could, desperately could use an RMC coaster. Like, when you look at the parks in the country that don't have one yet, like, Kennywood is, like, top of that list.
Come on.
Maybe not the very top, but it's, because I would say Kings Island's top of that list. But Kennywood's certainly in the top 5 parks that could seriously benefit from an RMC coaster. But
that would be so cool.
From what I hear, it was just too expensive for Kennywood at the time. So that's unfortunate. But the park started referring to this new attraction as Project 412 and began revealing clues on a virtual scorecard on Facebook every Thursday. It was like a scratch card here. You can see this is kind of what they were posting. And every day they were scratching off a new thing. And each of the numbers was related to some statistic having to do with the roller coaster. So I actually don't know what this 3 is for. The 197, that's the height of the tallest inversion on the ride, which is, but I don't know what this 3 is for. And obviously they revealed, 7 others after this day, but.
How far across are the seats? Is it 3 seats?
No, it's 2 across. So 3. It has 2 trains, so it's not how many trains it has. Someone is gonna, someone will call it out in the comments what the 3 is for. Idea. I don't know. So another teaser campaign started a few weeks later, involved an online word search where entrants were looking for 9 words that coincided with the 9 major statistics. So kind of the same thing doing here. So, and then finally on July 19th, 2018, Kennywood officially announced Steel Curtain, a $20 million looping coaster by S&S, with a planned opening of April 2019. So you can see they had like these renditions of how it would actually look in the park. This one's pretty cool because it points out all each of the elements on the actual attraction. And then
when they do that.
Yeah, and then they actually had this overhead too of kind of the whole Steelers country area with all the other things that are coming, because there's like so here's the roller coaster, then the store, and then like the brand experience and the all this other stuff that we never do. So,
that's very true.
Yeah, that's fair. So and like I said, the coaster was named after the famous defensive line from the 70s that we had talked about. Now, the only sad thing about it is by this point in 2019, 3 of the 4 guys from that defensive line had already passed away. So it's kind of sad that they didn't get to see this, but it's kind of in their honor, so to speak. So
yeah.
So, but anyway.
Who's the last one that got to see it, though?
I should have wrote that down. It was not, because like there was like 2 guys. There's one, Joe Green is like the one that was kind of the the best one, and he's a Hall of Famer now. I know he had passed away, and then the other one, Elsie Greenwood, who's kind of borderline Hall of Famer. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer yet, but he might be someday. He had passed away, so it was one of the other 2 guys, either Dwight White or Ernie. Oh my gosh, what was his name? I'm missing it right here. Ernie Holmes. So it was either Dwight White or Ernie Holmes. At the time was still alive. I think still is today, but I can't say for certain. So obviously at this point they're too old to ride the ride anyway, so they weren't at like the opening or anything, but there were some other Steelers players that showed up for the opening of the attraction and stuff like that. So the coaster was set to break 2 major records, and still holds both of these records to this day. The most inversions on a coaster in North America with 9. Every other coaster in North America is 7 or lower, so it broke the record by 2. So it wasn't even just like barely. It was like we're going to add 2 extra inversions on top of that. And then the tallest inversion in the world at 197 feet. So this it's called on here a fake out inverting drop. Basically, you go upside down and then go into the first drop from there. And it's at 197 feet, so that classifies it as the tallest inversion in the world. So, and it still holds both of those records to this day. So, pretty cool. Now, the decision to go with S&S as the manufacturer was questioned by some enthusiasts. Now, we haven't talked about S&S a whole lot. I don't know how familiar you are with that name.
There's my GP. I'm like,
well, they are responsible for one of your favorite coasters. So... Powder keg.
He pointed to a sign.
Yes, I got my powder keg
in
medal.
His man cave.
Yes, in here. I bought this at we're at Silver Dollar City for the opening of Fire in the Hole, and we walked through the gift shop, and I saw this metal.
No.
You saw this metal sign for powder keg, and you showed it to me, and I was like, basically, whenever there's new powder keg merch, I'm like, that is a given purchase for me at this point. So, because there's not a lot of it.
No,
so
there's not.
I was like, I gotta grab it whenever I find it. So they're also responsible for Max Force at Six Flags Great America. That's generally, most people would generally say that's their best coaster. They're known for their launch coasters more than anything. Talking about Powder Keg, and then Max Force is also a launch coaster. They're also responsible for the 4D. I'm drawing a blank on the actual name of the model. It's Tumbili at King's Dominion, the free spin, the 4D free spins, where it's a vertical, but it just drops and spins around.
Yeah,
that's S&S too that does that model. So they're known in the industry, but they're not like. They're not like Intamin or B&M or RMC. They're kind of a mid-tier manufacturer. Now, that being said, because it's just a standard looping coaster with a chain lift, shouldn't be too technologically complex. Should be fine, right?
Should be.
Well, we'll see. Construction would begin in August of 2018. Plenty of construction pictures, by the way. This is just a handful of them, but there were tons of them, mostly because the park was still open when they started construction in August. And then construction continued into the next summer. So there was a lot of time frame where the park was open while it was under construction. So here's some statistics that I have from construction, which we don't get these a lot, but I know you really like them when we have them.
I love statistics.
152 concrete footers weighing 8.3 million pounds.
What?
That's just the concrete to hold this thing in place. It's 8.3 million pounds.
That's insane.
It's such a crazy number.
And then there's the carnival rides, and they don't have any concrete. Sorry. Okay, so we just
it was...
The reason I keep bringing up the carnival is because we live in this subdivision that's right behind a field,
and we live in a small town. It's like 7,000 people.
Yeah,
right.
So tiny town, and then anyway, so we live behind this field, and like out in this field, they'll sometimes like have events for this small town. Like in October, they have the mule jump, which is the dumbest event in the world.
Okay, we're not gonna get the mule jump.
No, but then they have this year. They decided, okay, well, we're gonna do a carnival, which they've never done before. And,
we think they've done it in the past, but not since we've moved here.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So, but they did it far enough that it like wasn't affecting how loud it was by our house. Anyways, needless to say,
like Haley was able to walk to it.
Yeah,
it was close enough that she could do that, but it wasn't like in our face and keeping the kids awake and stuff like that.
So it was kind of cool. So like they had this carnival. And it's just funny because Nathan and I kind of have the same feeling that we just don't trust the carnival.
Yeah, and I think it's just part of me being an amusement park snob. Like I've gone to these big amusement parks for so long that like seeing carnivals, I just kind of like, portable rides just kind of make me nervous.
Yeah,
like,
it was on a truck.
Yeah, exactly. Like I don't know.
Yeah.
And I know that you can move roller coasters because, like, some of the old Schwarzkopf coasters that are at the parks started out as carnival coasters and then eventually ended up at an amusement park. So, like, I know it's possible to do it safely, but I don't know. Like we went to one in the Pittsburgh area, where they just had like some kiddie rides and then like one or two bigger rides.
The kiddie rides
and the kid ride, like we put Parker on it and like the seatbelt had broke, and so they had just tied a rope in place of the seatbelt.
There you go, kid.
So like things like that is what you see at carnivals, at least in my experience, and so carnivals make me nervous.
Yeah, they make me nervous too.
So.
I mean, like, we've said that carnival's at, like, the bottom of the totem pole
for us. Yeah, it's like carnival, and then county fair, state fair, and then amusement park.
Yes. So, like, the county fair, I felt a little bit more comfortable getting on some of the stuff.
Some county fairs have permanent roller coasters there that are there all the time.
Yeah,
so.
But it's just, like, at the same time, it still make me nervous. Because there seems just too many, like...
some state fairs have that, not county fairs.
Yeah, and I think, like, growing up, like, there wasn't a lot more social media as there is nowadays. And so I'm even more nervous.
Oh yeah, you see horror stories of carnival rides falling over all the time.
Right, so it, like
not all the time, but occasionally you see one.
And so it like makes me even more nervous to like let Parker get on any kind of thing. And I'm like, no.
And it's one thing if it's like a little spinning ride on the ground.
But like it's just like
like
the ones that like go upside down and like flip over and like you can literally see it.
Like shaking. They had one of those. The big ride that they had at our carnival is like one of those zippers that like spins around and the cars like go around as the big like.
Right. I'm like, no,
that thing is so big. Like.
Yeah, then you had like a Ferris wheel too. That wasn't like super big, but like still.
Ferris wheels, at least Ferris wheels aren't moving fast, so that makes me a little less nervous. I know Ferris wheels freak you out in general.
But like, there would be no way. There would be no way. If it was a permanent one and it was that height, yeah, maybe I'd get on
Gotcha,
it.
but like, not at the carnival.
No. I was like, well, it was funny too, because like, so when I was the only one that walked over, because Nathan was staying with the kids were asleep, so I stayed here. Last night, so we were like, okay, whatever. So I went over, and I'm like looking at all this stuff, and there's like people like completely that came out of the woodwork for this carnival. And anyways, but the lines were so long. Like people were seriously waiting like 30 minutes to get on these rides.
Crazy, man.
Yeah.
It makes me wonder how many people that come to carnivals and stuff like have never been to like Silver Dollar City. And I get the carnival's a lot cheaper than Silver Dollar City. So if you can't afford it, I get that.
No, it was $30 for like a pass.
Was it really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's still like half as much as Silver Dollar City, but
I mean, like for the amount that you're going to spend on these rides, you can, save your money and go to, I don't know.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
So they looked nice though. The lighting packages were really well done on the carnival. I will say. So every time we drove by it at night, I was like, "Whoa, we did a good job with the lighting packages."
I guess.
Anyway. Tangent over.
Yeah, okay, tangent over.
So 152 concrete footers weighing 8.3 million pounds, 113 pieces of track weighing at 12,000 to 15,000 pounds a piece.
There you go. It's like a giant puzzle.
It really is. Like they at the factory they build this in pieces, ship it to the park in pieces, and then it's assembled at the park. That's really how roller coaster construction works. You can do.
20... Give me the instructions.
Hey, let me see. Can you imagine the instructions for something that big? It'd be like this massive manual.
It's not like IKEA.
No. 21,000 bolts, and then the support structure is made up of 1,162 individual pieces. So I mean, just the track is 113 pieces, and then everything else is 1,100 pieces.
I could do it.
That's crazy.
That's an easy puzzle. We get it done in a couple hours.
Yeah, there you go. So. For the rest of the 2018 season, the lagoon had to be drained for construction purposes because part of the coaster does go over the lagoon. You can kind of see that here. The lagoon usually goes out to this fence line right here, but they kind of drained it back so they could pour these concrete footers and etc. So. This one is also, you can tell this is during Christmas time because they're working on the Christmas tree in the background here. So. As April of 2019 neared, it became clear that the ride wasn't quite ready. I guess usually when that happens, we're like, oh, another delay in construction. This was actually legitimate. It was a lot of severe weather in late 2018 that It was so windy that they couldn't even get the cranes up to start putting track pieces in place.
Insane.
So they had delays because of weather, which is, that happens.
Right.
Track was completed in June of 2019, and testing began shortly thereafter. They completed over 1,000 test runs before they deemed it ready to open. And then on July 13th, 2019, Steel Curtain would officially open to the public. So here's some pictures from opening day. Good amount of people here. And like I said, it's not really clear in this picture, but there were some coaches and players from the Pittsburgh Steelers that were there for opening day, which is kind of cool.
Yeah.
So
everybody in their Steelers.
Yeah, absolutely. The ride experience is as follows. Immediately after leaving the station, the train climbs the 220-foot tall lift hill, angled 50 degrees off the ground, which is that's pretty steep for a lift hill, steeper than most coasters.
Right.
After cresting the lift, it dips slightly and veers left into the world's tallest inversion, the 197-foot Drachenfire dive drop. We'll more on this in a minute. We'll talk about that inversion in a sec.
Okay.
The train drops 205 feet out of the inversion, hitting the top speed of 75 miles per hour. After a bank turn to the left, the train enters a banana roll, a dual inverting element named after its characteristic shape. If you look at it from the side, it looks like a banana. So, riders descend down to...
Okay.
I didn't name these, so I don't know what to tell you. The riders descend back to ground level once more, into a small airtime hill, and then ascend into the double inverting sea serpent element. After another airtime hill, the train heads towards the lagoon and then ascends into a dive drop that takes, or a dive loop that takes riders back the other direction. The train immediately ascends into a zero-G roll directly under the previous airtime hill. Exiting the zero-G roll, and after a brief airtime moment, the train enters a corkscrew before taking a tight bank turn to the right and entering a quick cutback element, which is the 9th and final inversion. Exiting the cutback, the train jumps over a brief airtime hill and into the final brakes. So, to count them off, the one inversion is the Drachenfire dive drop at the very beginning. Then it goes into the banana roll, which is 2 inversions. And then it goes into the sea serpent roll, which is another 2 inversions. Ugh. And then it goes over the airtime hill, goes into the dive loop, 6. The zero-G stall at 7. It does say zero-G roll on here. I just realized it's actually a zero-G stall, if I remember correctly.
Does it matter?
It does matter. Zero-G roll goes all the way to 360. Zero-G stall goes one way and then flips back the other way. So
it doesn't matter. You're still sick.
So zero-G stall 7, corkscrew 8, cutback inversion number 9. So
yep, still sick.
It's a wild ride. It is so disorienting. Like
I'd pass out.
You are all over the place.
I would literally
such a great ride.
Your definition of great ride and my definition of great ride are very opposite.
This is what defines the coaster enthusiast and the GP. This is the difference between us.
Yeah, that's my...
I will ride anything, she will not. So... Now, the Drachenfire dive drop. Let's talk about that for a minute, because why is it called that? Well, so Steel Curtain was designed by legendary coaster designer Joe Draves. He's responsible for other coasters, such as last episode's Lightning Run. I didn't even do that on purpose, that he'd actually designed 2 coasters in a row that we just talked about, but he's also responsible for 2 of RMC's most recent masterpieces, Wildcat's Revenge at Hershey Park, and Airy Force 1, which we just rode a few weeks ago, which is
so good.
So good. So he's a fantastic coaster designer. Definitely, now that Alan Schilke is kind of retired, I think most people would say Joe Draves is probably the number 1 coaster designer in the world right now. So
yeah.
Now, he's gone on record saying that Steel Curtain's first inversion was inspired by Drachenfire, which is in this picture here. It's an old aero looping coaster that operated at Busch Gardens Williamsburg from 1992 to 1998. The element that inspired him was this element right here. It's called the wraparound corkscrew. You basically go into this first drop and then you come into this corkscrew before you even get down to ground level. And then the corkscrew would take you all the way back down to top speed. So kind of a unique element that's not really on any other coasters. And so you can kind of see how this element is similar in design to how Drachenfire's was. It's just in the opposite direction. Now, Drachenfire was a complete disaster. It only operated for 6 years. That tells you how bad it was. That's a story for another day. But that'll have to be one of our Halloween specials. We'll talk about Drachenfire one of these days. But Draves took inspiration from this coaster and modernized it for Steel Curtain. And so the name of the inversion is called the Drachenfire Dive Drop, just to kind of in memento to the coaster that inspired the element. So
yeah.
The trains featured the jersey numbers 19 and 33. Oh, I actually didn't get a picture of that in here. Oh. Anyway, the trains have a 1-9 on one and then 3-3 on the other, just kind of the same way the helmets do.
Yeah.
Some people think it's in reference to a specific player. It's actually in reference to the year that the Pittsburgh Steelers were founded, which is 1933. So there you go. Now, there is some debate on whether the coaster actually has 9 inversions or 8. And the discrepancy comes from the banana roll. So if you're not a coaster enthusiast, I will say you got to brace yourself for some very technical coaster stuff here. You ready?
Sure.
You brace yourself?
Bracing.
What defines an inversion?
Oh, gosh.
No, I'm just kidding. No, but really, at what point do you consider it upside down? Because 180 degrees is obvious.
Does it make you sick?
It doesn't make you sick.
Yes.
Airtime hills can make you sick.
Okay.
So obviously 180 degrees is upside down, but 170, 135, 110, where's the line, right? So the roller coaster database, and by default most enthusiasts use 135 degrees as the magic number. And it makes sense because once you hit 136 degrees, you're now closer to being upside down than horizontal, which is 90 degrees, if you just do the math there. So that's kind of the rule of thumb, is 135 is when you hit an inversion, okay? So you can even have an overbank turn that goes to like 110, but that's not considered inversion because you're mostly horizontal. You're not really close to upside down at that point, okay?
Yes.
So if we take Wildfire's Cobra Roll here, which I've got this picture here, our very own Wildfire.
Oh.
The Cobra Roll is considered 2 inversions because you go upside down here. Then at this point in the Cobra Roll, you're back right side up. And then as you enter, the second half of the Cobra Roll, you go back upside down again. And so that classifies it as 2 inversions. Make sense?
Okay.
You with me so far?
Not really. But continue, because your enthusiast friends are, so.
He was like,
Remember how tired I am?
Yeah, so. Now still.
I'm getting hungry, too.
That's not good. Now, Steel Curtain's banana. It's more distractions. Steel Curtain's banana roll is a little bit different because while it's a very similar element, that it's basically like you go upside down, kind of exit it, and then come back around the other direction. Instead of returning back to near 0 degrees in the middle, you can see in the banana roll, they're still almost sideways as they come through the middle section of the inversion right here. And this is the rendering, and then you can see it even so in this construction picture here, how you're almost at 90 degrees during the middle portion of the banana roll here. So Kennywood still classifies this as a 2 inversion element, but Roller Coaster Database classifies it as 1 inversion because it doesn't flip back to using the same math to calculate when you enter an inversion as at 135 degrees. If you use that same math, you don't exit an inversion until you go back under 45 degrees, because then you're closer to, you're closer to right side up than you are to upside down at that point. Does that make sense? There's a lot of math involved here if you want to.
I don't do math.
He was like, lots of numbers.
Potato patch fries.
Just
want the potato patch.
Just take me to Fam's Revenge already. So.
No, I'm more fries right now. Give me them fries.
So just to recap, if you look at Steel Curtain's banana roll, the trains are nearly 90 degrees horizontal during the middle of the element. So that RCDB sees the banana roll as one continuous inversion rather than Kennywood sees it as two separate inversions connected. So that's where the controversy comes in on whether it has 8 inversions or 9. It still holds the North American record either way because, like I said earlier, 7 was the previous record, and there's a lot of coasters that have 7. But it is just kind of an interesting that there is some discrepancy there between the park and the enthusiasts. Personally, when I tell people about it, I say it has 9 inversions. It doesn't really matter to me that much. I don't know. If the park says it has 9 inversions and I don't know, you go upside down twice. I don't know. It's not that big of a deal. It's,
Does it make you sick? Yes.
But how many times does it make you sick?
9 times.
9 times?
All the times.
All the times. Bored yet?
A little bit.
A little bit. That's okay. We're done. We're done with the technical stuff now.
Okay.
Reception for Steel Curtain was outstanding. Like all the enthusiasts just said that it was,
Notice how you said all the enthusiasts. Most
the GP likes this ride too. Lots of people. If you don't get sick going upside down on coasters, then you will like Steel Curtain. So I understand that is not your cup of tea, but there are a lot of people that like it. So I mean, the line was 34-minute average last year, so it's got lots of people riding it. Up until its opening in 2019, the only looping coasters in the country with more than 6 inversions had mostly been built in the 90s and the early 2000s. A lot of B&M loopers during that time frame. The only exception being Banshee at Kings Island, which opened in 2014 with 7 inversions. So Steel Curtain was kind of a modern take on the B&M looping coaster, like Wildfire, but like 20 years later. Yeah. So it's kind of an interesting concept. Obviously, it's being done by S&S instead of B&M at this point. But Steel Curtain would win the Golden Ticket Award for Best New Attraction of 2019. So Kennywood and S&S were very pleased with that. And for those that get to ride it, a lot of people say it is great. Like, I mean, obviously the lap bars prevent from any headbanging. A lot of enthusiasts say it does have a slight rattle, but I didn't really notice it. I don't know, maybe if I had been able to ride it more than just the one time I did, if I would have noticed it more. But I was just so disoriented the whole time. I didn't really notice anything else.
Yeah, I don't think I would have even been conscious. Like, just passed out the first inversion and just like, oh yeah, that was a cool ride. So that would be me.
Now, unfortunately, it hasn't been all sunshine and rainbows ever since. And really, it never was all sunshine and rainbows, because on opening day, a train got stuck on the lift hill and the ride had to close.
Heck no.
And the ride,
this is my worst nightmare.
And the ride had to close down for the rest of the day on opening day. Can you imagine showing up for opening day of a new coaster and like before you even get to go on it, it shuts down for the rest of the day? Like, what are you going to do at that point?
I don't know. But yeah, that's my worst nightmare. Like, for real.
Yeah, if people have listened to the show for a while, they know. You've mentioned it once or twice. Well. So, and this was the start of bad things to come. 3 weeks later, the ride would be closed for 4 days while S&S and Kennywood made some technical adjustments. Steel Curtain would not operate at all during 2020 due to the pandemic. So they say, but all the other coasters in the park opened during the pandemic, so that doesn't really make sense to me. I mean, that's the first time I went to Kennywood is when you took me, and it was like 6 months. It was like
I remember,
it was August. It was it was like, I think it was July of 2020 when we went.
Yeah.
And everything was open except for Steel Curtain.
Right.
So I didn't get to ride it that day.
Right.
Anyway, after reopening in 2021, it was common to see the ride close for several hours or even several days at a time. In 2022, the coaster would close for a whole month for repairs during the summer.
Yeah.
In August 2023, the coaster closed for the remainder of the season. Like, we're talking about a coaster that is less than 5 years old. This is crazy.
Yep.
Like, usually we're, the first year, yes, you can have issues like this. I'm talking about you, Cedar Point. Now, so it does have...
We want them to like us.
Cedar Point doesn't like me. I know this. I've made too many posts about them at this point.
Nathan.
They don't like anybody, though. They only like people that tell the good stuff that happens at the park, so...
Okay.
It's fine. But, yeah, I mean, it happens. Top Thrill 2 is going through it right now, right?
Right.
But when it's happening year after year after year, and the ride just opened, like, that's crazy. And that's kind of what, the other coaster we talked about this season that had this problem was Lightning Rod at Dollywood. They were just constantly making changes to it because it just, nothing they seemed to do seemed to fix the problem. And so the park won't come outright and say what the issue is, because the parks never do, just for, HR purposes.
Right.
Not HR purposes, PR purposes. It's totally different. So take this next portion with a grain of salt, because this is just what I hear from other people in the industry. This is not official. This is just what I'm hearing from other people, okay?
Okay.
From what I hear, much of the recurring issues with the ride have been structural. So the supports and the foundations aren't able to tolerate the amount of action that the ride creates.
Even with all that concrete,
it's still having problems, right?
Goodness.
So essentially, as the park is performing regular inspections of the ride, they continue to find structural issues that require long-term maintenance. From what I hear, SNS didn't account for, what they didn't account for was that because the coaster loops in and around itself, some of the support structure is getting utilized more than others. For example, the dive loop is kind of off on its own over by the lagoon. And so every cycle, it's only getting hit by the train's force one time.
Yeah.
Once per cycle. But the lift hill, which is attached by the support structure, is attached to the dive drop and the sea serpent roll and the banana roll. So that support structure is getting hit 5, 6, 7 times a cycle as it weaves in and out through all these different things. And so it's taking, 6 times as much force as the support structure over by the dive loop. And so, yeah, apparently Kennywood is furious with SNS. Like, they hired them. There are a half dozen companies out there that can build simple, non-launching looping coasters, and they've been doing it for decades with no issue.
Right.
And the one time SNS gets hired to do so, they just totally flop.
Yeah.
So, not good. And it's not even that the ride is that technologically complicated. Yes, it has a lot of inversions, but to get through more inversions, all you need is a little extra speed. Like, it's not like the inversions are... that's not launching through the inversions. Right. They didn't develop like special trains that can only go through these types of inversions. Like, they're inversions. The inversions have been on coasters for 50 years now.
Right.
It's just that we're adding a couple extra, so the coaster needs to go a little bit faster. Right. B&M and Intamin could have handled this no problem.
Right.
No problem at all. But going with SNS probably came with a cheaper price tag than going with B&M or Intamin or RMC or whatever other manufacturer. So that's where it's like, oh man, you trust these other manufacturers to deliver on their promises, but it's the difference of buying a BMW versus buying a used... What was the car you drove in high school? No, not the Hellcat. The car you drove in high school. The Geo. The little Geo Metro. It's like the difference between...
A little babe car.
Yeah. Right? Like, yes, both do the same thing, but one's going to have more problems than the other. So, it's a tough thing. And, and every manufacturer has to start somewhere. Like, RMC had to start somewhere, and they did it right, and so they've built a reputation of, for the most part, of, building really successful coasters that perform well. So,
right.
Anyway, I'm not a coaster manufacturer, so I'm not going to get into the weeds on that, but it is just interesting that they go with this manufacturer that's kind of not really one of the top tier ones, and now they're kind of almost paying the consequences on the backside. Probably a lot faster than anybody anticipated, though. I mean, we haven't even... Yeah. It's not even 5 years old yet. That's crazy.
Do you think they'll take it down?
Well, we'll get to that in a second.
Well,
Honestly, let's talk about it now, because it's only like a couple sentences away in my script here, and you're asking the question.
Fast forward.
So this all comes to a head a few months ago when on April 17th, 2024, the park announced that Steel Curtain would be closed for the entirety of the 2024 season. So you'll notice when I did my talking about the ride when it opened, I usually always say, and continues to operate to this day.
Yeah.
I had to leave that out this episode because it does not continue to operate to this day. It's technically the terminology right now is standing but not operating is the terminology it falls under right now. So yeah, it's a mess. It's still there, running. But it's not open. Yeah, it's a mess. When it will open. So, Kennywood announced that they're closing it. So here, I'll just read the actual announcement here. To increase ride reliability and longevity, the Steel Curtain will undergo an extensive modification project this year. The park has worked with third-party engineers and the ride's manufacturer to determine a long-term solution that will allow the ride to run without interruption. The coaster will be closed for the entirety of the season as we work on this project. Now, there's been a little bit of drama with this because... once again, when Kennywood in their late announcements, they announced this 3 days before the park opened for the season. They announced this April 17th. Opening day was April 20th. Yeah,
you and I talked about this. We're
like, what the hell? Come on, man. And I don't know if
why would you pay for your pass if you would... Yeah.
Yeah, that's... there are people that are very upset with that because you basically have... anyone that bought a season pass... except for those last 3 days before the park opened, all the people that bought a season pass before that bought it with the assumption that all the rides would be open. And Steel Curtain, whether or not you classify it as the headlining attraction, is certainly one of the top 2 rides in the park between, with Phantom's Revenge and Steel Curtain, right? Mm-hmm. So, I mean, to be selling your season pass at full price and then to shut down one of your headline attractions right before...
I agree.
That's crazy, man. So
I feel like they should have at least reduced their price of the season pass. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I mean, it's one thing if they said it's going to be closed for a couple months. But to close it for the entire year tells me that they've known it was a significant issue for a while and didn't disclose this. So and I don't know if they did that on accident or just now realizing how stupid that was, or if they really did just hold out on people so that they could sell more season passes, which is pretty scummy if that's what they did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the park's been sued by a disgruntled pass holder because of the whole situation.
Right.
And I don't think it's going to go anywhere because there's too much, he said, she said type of thing that's going to have to go with, that. So I don't think he has anything to stand on to actually get his money back, but it does, I don't know, it's a sticky situation.
Think about this. Like, if you had a family of 7, and everybody got a family pass for that, that's hundreds of dollars.
Oh, yeah.
And
what if all of your favorite ride is Steel Curtain?
Yep.
What if none of you really care for Phantom's Revenge?
Yep.
Like, that's...
Yep.
What a mess. So... that takes us to today, and the coaster is supposed to be celebrating its 5th birthday in a few weeks, but instead it's just going to be
really unfortunate.
It's just going to be sitting there waiting to see what the future holds.
Sad.
It's just very sad.
The 5th birthday of it is just it sits there.
And I had planned to do this episode prior to the April 17th announcement because I put together the whole season. I make changes to the schedule periodically based on parks we go to and maybe I don't know, I make changes occasionally, but I generally try to plan out a whole season before we start recording, which is at the beginning of April.
Right.
So I had Steel Curtain marked for this week this whole time because of its birthday.
Yeah.
And now we're where we're at, which gave me more content to talk about in today's episode, so I guess that's good, but it's very sad, unfortunately.
Making it interesting, I guess.
So your question was, are they going to tear it down? My answer, I would say no. If I had to guess, I think people enjoy it enough that they would prefer to fix it rather than tear it down. Now, if you ask Kennywood enthusiasts what they want, I would also assume most people say just fix it.
Yeah.
But there are going to be some purists that say tear it down because it's ugly and it doesn't fit in with the Kennywood mission statement or what, like people are like, I want the old Kennywood back. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, there's going to be some people like that. Some people will say tear it down and build Logjammer again. Like
Give me my Logjammer!
Those are some serious purists that would say that, and they're out there. So
that's true. They are out there.
They are out there. So, but if I had to guess, I'm not gonna say it will never be torn down because there are coasters that get torn down that I would have never guessed that. But so never say never. But I would bet money that the first thing they're gonna try is to fix it, and if they can fix it, then great, and if they can't, then what? So
right.
But that is the history of Steel Curtain at Kennywood.
Poor Steel Curtain.
Crazy that a 5-year-old coaster can fill an entire hour and a half episode worth of history, but it's had quite the troubled childhood, so to speak.
It's so sad that this is just the situation that Kennywood's in. It's like they do so good with their potato patch French fries and Phantom's Revenge and Jackrabbit.
Yeah, all the maintenance on all their old Woodies. Yeah.
They just can't get it right with this one.
Oh man,
and I don't know if it's S&S fault or if it's Kennywood's fault or both.
I would bet most of it is on S&S, just because Kennywood seems to know what they're doing when it comes to coaster maintenance.
Yeah.
Now that being said, I don't know if Kennywood made the right decision going with S&S. You can debate that all day long.
Yeah.
Same thing that people are doing with Cedar Point and Zamperla right now, but it is what it is. You've made you've made your bed, now lie in it type of thing. They've built this $20 million coaster. You got to find a way to keep it open now. So
yeah.
Anyway. Well, thank you for tuning in to today's episode. If you like that episode, be sure to give us a 5-star rating, whether you're listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, wherever you may be. Those 5-star ratings help people find the podcast in the future, and we really appreciate when you take the time to do so.
It's true.
Yeah.
And all it is one click.
It's one click.
Click.
You don't even have to leave a review, just a rating, just a 5-star rating.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, be sure to follow us on social media. As I mentioned at the top of the show, you can find us on Instagram and Twitter/X. Our handle is @airtimetraveler on both of those, and you can see some of the pictures and from today's episode that I showed Haley. And I think that's all we got for today. We're going to try to get some trip reports out. We are also taking a trip in a couple weeks for Haley's brother's getting married, but we're also going to be taking a trip to Hershey Park while we're out there. Yeah. Get our first rides on Wildcats Revenge, and also check out the new Sky Rush restraints. So some exciting stuff there.
So excited.
Yep, so another coaster trip upcoming. So that's exciting stuff. So we'll be getting as many trip reports out as possible before we leave, and then we may have to do some catching up after we get back. But just be patient with us. I promise we won't take as long as we did with the Lagoon trip report. So
we won't do that. No. I'll make sure of it. GP will make sure.
GP will handle it. So GP knows best.
That's right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you for tuning to this episode, and we will see you in the next one.